I really don't want to see hands, but have any of you ever heard the phrase, he's been red-pilled before? Of course, most of you have. We live in a very politically charged city, and it's a politically charged term now. But for those of you who don't know, being red-pilled is a term for a person who has converted to more conservative, or we might say more right-wing ideas. The idea is that you used to be an NPC, which is this non-player character, and you've just kind of been existing in the world, and all of a sudden you've had an awakening. You've converted to more right-wing ideas, and you've had an awakening. You've been red-pilled. Now, this idea comes from a rather famous movie. It'll be up on the screen. A rather famous cultural icon now, but it comes from the movie The Matrix. The Matrix. And in The Matrix, all humans they've all been enslaved to these machines, these AI robots. And all the humans have been put into, unwillingly have been put into a virtual reality where they're now completely controlled by these robots. And unknowing to them, they're now being harvested for energy. Except what you find out as you watch The Matrix, some of these humans have been breaking free from the Matrix. And in particular, this gentleman, Morpheus, who's played by Lawrence Fishburne, has gotten free from the Matrix. And so now what Morpheus is doing is he's going back into the Matrix, and he's trying to free people from the system, we might say. But always, what we find in these movies, always is to start the journey, Morpheus presents them with a choice. He says, you either have the red pill or you have the blue pill. You either have the red pill or you have the blue pill. And of course, the red pill, it frees them from the system. It frees them from this pseudo reality, and they have this awakening. And of course, the blue pill keeps them sleeping, so to speak. It keeps them in the game. So you can see where this idea of red pilling comes from. It comes from the Matrix. But the idea of truth setting you free actually goes back way further than just this wonderful cultural icon. It goes back way further than just the motto of Johns Hopkins or St. John's, which is the truth will set you free. Or it goes further back than the inscriptions on some of our great universities that reads on many of the libraries in places like UT Austin and Harvard. The truth will set you free. It goes back further than the unofficial motto of CIA, which is the truth will set you free. This phrase actually goes back to Jesus, who first says it here this morning, who says, you will know the truth, and the truth will set you free. It's a powerful concept that truth can set you free, that knowledge can change your life. But more importantly, the deepest meaning of this phrase is that truth isn't just knowledge. It's not just some right facts, some data that can perhaps change your life, because ultimately data and just some knowledge can't change your life. The greatest truth about this statement is that truth is a person. And to know the truth requires a commitment to the person of truth, to Jesus Christ himself, the person of truth. Sadly, this point, as we all know, as you observe the world around you, sadly, this point has been forgotten by most of the culture and the memes and the universities today. And the fruit of that this morning is that we're one of the most knowledgeable, perhaps the most data accessible cultures in history, and yet at the same time, we're one of the most foolish cultures and societies to ever grace the great planet Earth. Truth is ultimately a person. And while intellectual achievements and while learning and being a subject matter expert are great this morning, in order to not be foolish, it needs to be combined with a commitment to the person of truth, to God himself in Jesus Christ. Because when you know the truth, when you know Jesus Christ, it's not just intellectual. is not just more knowledge, because to know the truth actually creates implications in your life. It actually creates impact in your life. It actually changes the way you live. It actually creates a personal, practical impact on your life. His power, his grace begins to set you free from things that you didn't even know were holding you back, things that even right now you don't know are holding you back because it's not fully known to you. But he makes it known. He makes it understood because the truth can set us free. That's really my main idea of this sermon this morning. It's the main idea of the passage, so it's going to be my main idea of this message, and it's this: you will know the truth, and the truth will set you free. You will know the truth, and the truth will set you free. I have just one point this morning. I'm going to be a little bit more brief this morning. That point's also going to be a paraphrase of this main idea. And that point this morning is that I can set you free. Not me, but God and Jesus Christ. I can set you free. The truth can set you free. Verse 31, let's look at our first point. I can set you free. Our first and only point this morning, verse 31. So Jesus said to the Jews who had believed in him, "If you abide in my word, you are truly my disciples, and you will know the truth, and the truth will set you free." So Jesus has been talking to a crowd now for some while, and he has told this crowd, he is the way, the truth, and the life. I am the light of the world. Whoever believes in me will no longer walk in darkness, but walk in the light of life. He said to them clearly, he's one with the Father. He's been sent by the Father. He's doing the will of the Father. And now some of them have believed in him. Some of them have actually believed him. They believe that he is the Messiah. They, of course, don't know about the cross. They don't know about the resurrection. They probably don't have any idea or think that he's divine or anything like that. But they think this guy is probably the Messiah. This guy is the person that our scriptures are speaking about. Our long-awaited leader has come. So they have somewhat of an incomplete understanding. But notice, just as Jesus invites you and I into a deeper understanding of who he is this morning, just as he invites us into a deeper discipleship of our lives, he also invites them into a deeper discipleship. He also invites them into a deeper understanding. Verse 31, he says first, "If you abide in my word, you are truly my disciples." Now that phrase, abide in my word, means to let the truths of Jesus, to let the teachings of Jesus, to let the person of Jesus be so real to you that it affects everything about you. It means to let what Jesus has said about God. It means to let what Jesus has said about himself. It means to let what Jesus has said about me, what he said about you, about the world. It means to let that continually leave its mark on you. Let it continually speak to you. Let it continually answer you. It means to trust in his words. It means to build your life on his words. And even if you don't like those words, to not change his words, but to ask him to change you, to ask him to give you a heart to live out his words. Jesus says that's what a disciple is. This is a Christian, someone who's letting the word of God dwell in them richly, someone who's not perfect, but someone who's actually trying to live out the truth of Jesus, the truth of God, the truth about themselves, the truth about the world in real time. Now, of course, this puts us on a bit of a collision course this morning. It puts us on a collision course with what's often called easy believism. Easy believism. Easy believism is essentially I prayed the prayer theology. It's the I said the creed. I got baptized. I got confirmed. Now that's all well and good. Nice. That is awesome. But a good question for you this morning is, are you continuing in it? Are you enduring in it? Are you abiding in it? Is his love empowering your life, motivating you? Are the teachings of Jesus, are the words of Jesus, is the person of Jesus, is it so real to you that it's affecting everything about you? We live in a culture that loves instant results, instant coffee, instant ice cream, instant news. But the life of a disciple is not lived in an instant. It's lived in an eternal perspective. And Jesus says here, anyone can follow me. He says here to us this morning, anyone can follow me for a day. Anyone can follow me for a morning. But a genuine believer, someone who's actually come to real faith in me, will follow me for a lifetime. My words will dwell in them, and they'll dwell in my words, and it'll change everything about them. So Jesus says here, a true disciple, a true Christian is someone who abides, who remains in the word, someone who stays connected to him, not just connected to a feeling, but actually connected to his words. And Jesus says when you do that, it has a real personal, has a real practical impact on your life. Verse 32. And you will know the truth, and the truth will set you free. It'll set you free. He's ultimately saying, I can set you free. He's saying the truth about who I am, the truth about who God is, the truth about what this world is, the truth about who you are and your need for God's grace, the truth about this universe. If you know that, if you know me, it can set you free. I can give you real freedom. Now, we might be asking ourselves this morning, what is real freedom? What is real freedom? Well, on freedom, we totally agree with the culture on one particular thing, the feeling of freedom. We agree with the culture on one particular thing, the feeling of freedom. Both the church and the culture, Jesus and the culture would say that the feeling of freedom is feeling finally and fully alive. It's feeling like you're doing exactly what you were meant to do. Both the church and the culture believe that. That freedom feels like being alive and fulfilled, feeling like you're doing exactly what you're meant to do. But where we diverge is what we're freed from. Where we differ from the culture is what we're freed from. Our culture will generally say real freedom is being freed from all restrictions. It's shedding off all authority. It's living out your truth. It's Elsa's theme in the movie Frozen, Let It Go, where she sings in the middle of the song, no right, no wrong, no rules for me, I'm free. Or it's the famous 1992 Supreme Court case that ruled the heart of freedom is to define one's own concept of existence and meaning in the universe. So our culture would generally say real freedom is freedom from any design or any purpose from outside of you, any restrictions placed on you from outside of you. That's what they would say freedom is freedom from all of that. Well, we diverge greatly with our culture on this point because Christianity says something totally different. It goes the opposite direction. And it says real freedom is freedom from sin. Christianity says real freedom is freedom from sin. Christianity says that sin is rebellion against your design. It's the hard no against the actual purposes and calling that God has placed on your life. It's the self-destructing process of building your life on something other than God. To have actual freedom in this world, Jesus says, is to be free to live not for your own life, but for the Lord of your life. It's freedom to live according to God's purpose, according to God's holy design for your life, according to his calling on your life. It's freedom from the idols that promise the world to you, but never deliver. It's freedom from the masters who tell you that they can define you, but will never die for you. The world says freedom is all about the lack of constraints. God says freedom is having the right ones. This is the kind of freedom that Jesus wants us to have. But notice, not everybody's having it. Not everybody thinks they need it. Verse 33. They answered him, we are offspring of Abraham and have never been enslaved to anyone. How is it that you say you will become free? In other words, some people who aren't free think they're free. Some people who aren't free think they're free. Notice this response is the response of a religious heart. This response is the heart of a religious heart, and I'm using that term in a negative way. Jesus says, if you'll come to me, if you'll abide in my word, you'll know the truth, and the truth will set you free. But the religious heart always says, yeah, let me decode that. We're free. We're not the ones who are enslaved to hooking up. We're not the ones who are enslaved to greed. We're not the ones who are enslaved to all that crazy stuff out there. We're the offspring of Abraham. We're good. That's the religious heart. It's the heart of the Pharisee that beats his chest and says, God, thank you that I'm not like the prostitutes and the tax collectors and the addicts. It's the religious heart. And it may look different from the irreligious heart, the heart that's an open rebellion to God. But to have a religious heart, Jesus says, is to have the heart that is just like the irreligious heart. It's a heart that's completely blind to the things of God. It's just as blind to the depths of freedom as the irreligious heart, blind to the depths of what sin actually is. And here they're totally clueless when Jesus is calling them to freedom. They think he's talking about surface things, not the things of the heart. But notice how Jesus responds, verse 34. Truly, truly, I say to you, everyone who practices sin is a slave to sin. Jesus says here to the person who thinks that they're free, but isn't free, he says, no, you're not free. He says, you're not good. He says, look at the depths of your heart. He says, don't just look at the surface, look at the depths. He says, if you make a practice of sinning, that is, if in the depths of your heart you willfully sin, if it's routine, you're a slave to sin. It doesn't matter how moral you may appear. He says, if your life is characterized by a fightless, struggleless, and unrepentant pattern of sin, you're a slave to sin. And he says in verse 35, the slave does not remain in the house forever. The son remains forever. In other words, the slave doesn't get to stay. His contract eventually runs out. But notice, Jesus doesn't leave us with bad news this morning. He comes back around and he says it again here. He says to the religious heart and to the irreligious heart this morning, I can set you free. Verse 36. But if the Son sets you free, you will be free indeed. He says it again. He says, I can set you free. I can set you free from sin. Christianity says to the culture, we disagree with you on the very nature of freedom, particularly what we're freed from. But it also says here, we disagree with you on the nature of freedom, particularly how we get that freedom. How we get that freedom. Our culture will generally say, freedom, you get freedom by not having a master of any kind. You're your own master. But Jesus says here, no. True freedom is having the right master. Our culture says freedom is being mastered by yourself, finally and fully. But Jesus says here, no. Freedom is actually knowing me as Lord. Notice this illustration that Jesus throws at us. It's actually very helpful here. He pictures a house, and it must have been probably a Roman estate or a nice large house. And in the house, there's a slave and there's a son. Now, the slave actually represents the person who says, I'm my own master. I'm my own master. They're a slave because ultimately they're never their own master. Inevitably, something has to go in the place, in the space of God in their life. Maybe it's something like achievement. Maybe they think, I'm my own master. I'm my own Lord, so I'm going to live for myself. I'm going to live for my own achievements. But what they don't realize is pretty soon their entire identity is built on achievements. And so when they swing and they hit, it's a good day. But when they swing and they miss, it's a bad day. They become a slave to the game, we might say, to achievements. Now everything rides on that. Choices, decisions, all of life is now driven to achieve. It's everything. And if you don't sacrifice for it, you're in trouble. You'll never be complete. Or maybe perhaps it's image. Maybe they think, I'm my own master. I'm my own Lord. I'm going to live for myself and my image. But what they don't realize is pretty soon their entire identity is built on image. When people say they look good or others think highly of them, it's a good day. But when others might be talking about them behind their back or they don't feel like they're looking good, it's a bad day. They become a slave to the opinions of others, to image. And now everything rides on that. Choices, decisions. You're now driven to be liked, and it's everything. And if you don't serve it, you're in trouble. If you don't sacrifice it, you'll never be complete. The point is, you can pretend you're your own master. You can pretend you're free, but you're always going to serve somebody. You'll always serve something. And because those things aren't good masters, it will ultimately tyrannize you. It'll actually take you to the ground. But this morning, the good news of the gospel is that Jesus Christ has come to make you a son, to make you a daughter, to set you free, he says. And in the illustration, notice there's also the son. The son represents the person who is free. They're free because their relationship with the head of the household has been transformed. It's been transformed by his grace. It's been transformed from a relationship of fear, of pride, of compulsion, of performance, to a relationship of love, of intimacy, of security, of God's protection. How did that happen? Well, whom the Son sets free is free indeed. This is the truth of the Christian gospel this morning. That Jesus Christ hasn't just come to be the prophet or the teacher, but he's come to change your very status before God. And how did he do that? How did he do that? How did he make you a son or a daughter this morning? Well, the Lord of all of life chose to die for you, to die for me. God, in his great mercy, chose to shed his blood for you. And to be a Christian is to be able to say, I've been freed then by the power of God from the power of sin. I've been freed from the power of sin. That doesn't mean you won't struggle with it. That doesn't mean you won't perhaps ever sin again. It just means your relationship with it has been totally changed. Its major influence over you is gone. Its deceit is unmasked. Its impact is greatly lessened. Why? Well, because there's a new power at work in your life. And it's the very grace of God. And that grace has come into your life, and it's made you a son. It's made you a daughter. And it's given you a new relationship with the Father, one based not on fear or performance or pride, but one based on intimacy and love and security. This is the power of the Christian gospel. And it means not just forgiveness. It means not just a clean slate, but it also means freedom. A freedom that we all long for, a freedom that can actually fill us up and can finally make us feel alive. As we move to the Lord's Supper this morning, let's reflect on this great freedom that Jesus Christ has bought us, that he has won us, a freedom that can really set us free. If you would, pray with me. Lord Jesus.